Now, when a friend tells you that you should sniff a girl's underwear, you should never actually do it, especially if she's in the same room as you. But when this girl literally walked inside that change room and she saw me sniffing it, I really don't know what else to say. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another crazy but also really embarrassing story that I regret to tell. Now, the story all starts off back when I was in high school, and this was my grade 9 year. Now, in grade 9, I was a player, I guess people would say, but not to a point where I would go out of my way to go get girls. Like, I wasn't as devious nor as, I guess, how do I put this? More crazy. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but honestly, from all these stories that I've told so far, I wouldn't blame myself for calling myself crazy. Anyways, though, I remember one day I was in my classroom with one of my friends, and my friend that was in this classroom, he was kind of a weird type of dude. Like, you know that guy that you have in your class where he says the most like outlandish comments, but at the same time kind of makes sense? Well, he was one of those guys. And I remember one day when we were sitting down beside each other, he looks over at me and says, "Yo, bro, did you like go for that girl you like yet?" "Oh, no. Why would I?" "Dude, you gotta go for her, man. Like, why don't you?" "I don't know. Maybe I don't like her that much, I guess." And what we were talking about was this girl that had a major crush on back when I was in high school. This girl back in my high school was a girl that was really attractive. She had blonde hair and blue eyes, and she was just like the perfect type of girl. I don't know. For some reason, I was really into white chicks back then with blonde hair, okay? Don't blame me for it. I'm sure some of you guys are into the same thing. And if you guys aren't, then comment down below what's your type of woman. But I remember he ends up looking at me right as I say that I wasn't maybe into her that much. And he says, "Bro, do you know the best way to find out if you're into a girl?" No. "What's the best way to figure it out?" "Bro, if you smell her undies." Wait, what? At this moment, he sounded crazy. And I even remember some of the girls in our classroom looking over at him as if he was crazy. But none of them decided to speak up because, well, once again, this is not one of the first times he said something pretty outlandish and pretty obnoxious. But he ends up saying, "Yeah, man, like, you don't understand. Girls cover themselves up with like all this like makeup and all this hairspray and all the stuff that makes them smell good, like perfume." "Yeah, so like wouldn't that make that their scent?" "Nah, bro, I'm talking about their natural scent. You know what I mean? Their natural scent?" "Yeah, dude, like the scent that they were born with. Think about it. You were given birth by your mom, so that means whatever your mom smells like in her undies is the same smell that you will have." At this moment, I actually started questioning his theory because in a way it kind of made sense, but at the same time it didn't. But as crazy as the theory sounded, I was in grade 9 and I wasn't that smart. And at the same time, I stood there thinking, yo, this actually kind of makes sense. Wait, what? But right as I started thinking about it, the bell ended up ringing, and that's when basically everyone stood up and left the classroom. Even my friend that was pretty obnoxious. I remember I ended up walking down the hallway, going to my locker, and as I opened my locker, I started to really think to myself, does your undies actually give you the natural scent that a person has? So that's when I ended up going into the bathroom, and I took off my boxers, and I smelt my own underwear. And I'm not gonna lie, I did smell something, but I didn't really know if it was my natural scent. I'm not gonna say it smelled bad, because it didn't, to be fair. It was a fresh pair of underwear. So, you know, I couldn't make a conclusive point to this guy's theory. So that's when I decided to basically give up on it, because I knew in my mind that there was no possible way I was going to get my girlfriend's underwear until something insane happened. Because I remember lunch ended up coming around that same school day. And basically, I ended up sitting with the boys that I was friends with back when I was in high school. And as we're all sitting in the cafeteria, I remember the same dude ends up walking up to us and ends up saying, "Yo, Bubba, did you do it yet?" "Do what?" is what one of my friends asked. And that's when I said, "Oh, he has like this dumb theory. You don't want to hear about it." And right as I say that, this guy ends up saying the whole theory once again to all my friends. And that's when I ended up standing up saying, "Okay, bro, I understand your theory, okay? But at the same time, there is no possible way I'm going to get her underwear. Like, seriously, how am I supposed to get it?" "I think I have an idea," is what one of my friends told me. And that's when we ended up coming up with a crazy plan. The next day at school, I remember I ended up meeting up with all my friends, and one thing led to another. My friend that had the crazy plan ended up coming up to me. He ended up coming up to me saying, "Yo, Bubba, 4th block, we're skipping it, and meet me in front of the school." "Wait, what? Meet you in front of the school? Wait, why? Why are we even skipping class? Can't we do this after school?" "No, it has to be 4th block. We're gonna see if this theory is true," is what he tells me. And I start to worry because one, it's never good to skip class. So anyone watching this video, do not skip class. It is not a good idea. Skipping school in general is just a dumb thing to do. Don't do it. If anything, don't do anything I tell in these stories. Seriously. But going on, I remember as the school day continued, in my mind, I kept thinking about how in the world I was going to skip 4th block and why in the world we're doing it in the first place. It started to really annoy me, but finally 4th block finally came around. And this is where things got insane. Because when 4th block came around, I went in front of the school and I met up with my friend. And my friend ends up up grabbing me by the wrist and saying, bro, come on, we gotta go around the school. So we end up going outside of the school, and we ended up going all around it until the back of the school. And behind my school, there was a giant field that people would do physical education in, which is a class, PE class, if you guys didn't understand that. And I remember when I looked over at the field on 4th block, I saw that my crush was there. And I was like, what are we doing here? My crush is right there. We're not gonna walk up to her, are we? No, bro, obviously not. Here, follow me. And that's when me and this guy, we ended up going back into the school from the back entrance, and we ended up going inside the girls' change room. And that's when he told me, here, look, there's her gym bag right there. Just go in, grab her underwear, and smell it. Dude, what? You want me to grab her underwear from her gym bag? Yeah, bro, it's gonna be totally fine. Just go grab it and just take a big whiff. At that moment, I started kind of like freaking out, because not only am I in the girls' change room, but I'm in the girls' change room to smell my crush's underwear. Like, you guys don't understand how bizarre this whole situation is. But I remember I look over at him and I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm doing that. This whole thing is dumb. Bro, just go and do it. She's not going to be here for like another 10 minutes. You're going to be totally fine. And at this moment, I ended up walking up to the gym bag. I opened it and I ended up grabbing her underwear out of it. There was this black pair of underwear that she had, and I ended up putting it up against my nose and I took a sniff. Yes, I did actually sniff my crush's underwear. And right as I'm sniffing it, I ended up turning around and I'm like, dude, she actually smells pretty good. And right as I turn around, my buddy ends up disappearing and my crush ends up walking in with 2 of her girlfriends. And yeah, let's just say I got ditched and I got embarrassed right at that moment, because I remember my crush looks over at me and she's like, what are you doing? Why are you holding my underwear? I was, you dropped it. Dropped it where? Wait, what are you even doing in here? You can get in serious trouble for being in the girls' locker room. At this moment, her girlfriend started laughing at me, and that's when I decided to do the one thing that I knew best. I sprinted the hell out of there, bro. I ran so fast down that hallway. I am not even joking. I think the teacher that I skipped class on literally didn't end up seeing me run right past him. I don't know. It was literally insane. And to this day, I still hate my buddy for doing that. But to be fair, we're still kind of friends to this day. I don't know. My opinion, don't go into the girls' change room and don't sniff a girl's underwear. The theory maybe is kind of true, but at the same time, I don't know. What do you think? So I'm not gonna lie, in high school, I've experienced a lot of crazy things. You guys would know this from watching the channel, but this story that I'm about to tell is the most bizarre story I have ever told. And to this day, I don't even know what happened myself. I don't know if it's really my fault, but at the same time, it kind of just happened. But before I do get into the story, make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Seriously, it means a lot when you guys do. And on top of that, not to mention, I am live on Kick streaming these amazing stories live and telling you them. So join me live, support me wherever you can, and I mean it. More of these stories are to come soon. But today's story does get insane, so let's just get straight into this. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So today's story takes place back when I was in high school. It was my grade 11 year, and I remember there was a really common joke going around my high school. Now, obviously, I think every high school has these jokes where basically people talk about the Devil's Tango toys. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably too young to be watching the channel, so maybe it's best not to watch it. But if you do want to learn more, I guess you guys could keep watching. Going on from there, I remember one time back when I was in high school, there was a person in my school who brought, well, a bunch of toys to school. And no, he wasn't using it on himself, he was using it to sell to other students. Now, this has a story for another time, but going on from there, I remember basically one thing that ended up happening was that there was a girl that I was talking to. Now, this girl was only a sneaky link. She was never someone that I was in a committed relationship with, because the only thing I really actually saw her for was her body, which sounds bad, but at the same time, this was me back in high school. I was a total F-boy. But I remember one time, I went up to this girl's locker because she was standing there, and I walked up to her and said, hey, like, do you want to do the Devil's Tango after school today? She looked at me and she said, honestly, Bubba, like, we should do something to spice it up a little, you know? Because, like, I don't know, I'm never in the mood when you ask me. Which is fair. I mean, you know, I can't argue with that. Because me and her have done it so many times to the point where I guess you don't get excited for it anymore. Like, even to this day, when I'm about to do the Devil's Tango, I never actually get excited for it anymore. So I remember what ended up happening was I told her, oh, like, do you want me to, like, somehow spice it up? is what I said. She got excited and her eyes opened wider and she said, how are you gonna do that exactly? I'll figure it out, is what I said. And then I walked away. Now, as I was walking away, I was just thinking of a way to spice things up in our, well, Devil's Tango relationship, I guess. And then that's when I saw him. The guy who basically sold Devil's Tango toys at our school. I remember I walked up to him and I'm like, yo, bro, I was just wondering, do you have anything that could spice up me and, you know, someone else's Devil's Tango time? He looked at me and said, oh yeah, she'll love this. Man pulled out a rainbow eggplant. Now, obviously I said no to that because the only eggplant I want to be used in that situation was my own. So I remember I told him, no, like, what's something that could like get her excited before, you know, it actually happens? He looks at me kind of awkwardly and said, well, I do have this one thing. And he ended up pulling out a pair of underwear. Now, I looked at him silly and I said, what is that gonna do? But then he gave it to me and said, hold it. I ended up holding it and then he ended up pulling out a remote and pressing the button. And when he pressed on it, I remember the underwear vibrated. It was so out of nowhere. And I remember I looked at him and said, wait a second, what? How does this even work? He looked at me and started laughing and he said, bro, just put it on a girl you like, and from there you just kind of just keep pressing the button until she wants you bad enough. Interesting, is what I mentioned afterwards. And then from there, I remember I ended up paying $50 for it, and then I went to go find the girl. When I found my sneaky link, I remember she was in class and she was actually funny enough doing a test. But then I decided to stand at the window and I kind of waved at her because she saw me because she was facing the window, and she looked at me saying, go away, because she was in the middle of a test. But then I kept waving for her to come over here and she ended up coming, and when she came, she told me, what do you want, Bubba? Like, I'm in the middle of a class right now. I ended up handing her the underwear and said, wear this. She looked at me really weird and she's like, why'd you get me these? And she didn't realize that they would vibrate when she would put them on. I remember I kept telling her over and over to just do it. Just do it and trust me, is what I told her. She looked at me and said, all right, I'll put them on after class. And then that's when she left. I remember after class that day, she ended up finding me in the middle of lunch and she walked up to me saying, okay, Bubba, I have them on. Now what? And then that's when I pulled out the button and I turned it on. When I turned it on, instantly she got turned on, and well, I guess you could kind of hear a little bit of a vibration coming out of her pants. And I remember she looked at me and went, Bubba, this is so... I remember right at that moment, she was really in the mood. And for some reason, it got to the point where things got really, really bad. Because I remember day by day, she would wear the same underwear and she wouldn't change her underwear at all because she wanted me to keep pressing the button during the most weirdest moments. Like, for example, a class assembly, to doing a presentation in front of the classroom, to even in the middle of PE class, she would ask me to do it. Like, what? I think this girl was kind of going crazy, but one thing I can't say is that it definitely spiced things up, because every day after school, she was always, and I mean always, in the mood to do the Devil's Tango. But I remember one day after we did the Devil's Tango, I told her how maybe she should, you know, maybe wash the underwear and kind of just, you know, maybe take a break from it for a couple days. But she didn't want to. It was like she was addicted to the underwear. So at that point, I remember I told her, okay, listen, maybe it's best if we just don't use it anymore. At that point, she got mad and she told me that I should just, you know, basically shut up and move on. I remember I looked at her kind of awkwardly and I'm like, if you want, you can have it, is what I said. And that's when I handed her the button. When I gave her the button, she got really upset at me, but at the same time, she seemed like it was a relief. Honestly, none of it made sense to me, but I basically decided to move on from her and basically not have her as a sneaky link anymore, because she was getting really obsessive with this pair of underwear. From there, I remember me and her, we basically cut things off. We stopped talking, but the story gets wilder because I remember, I want to say 1 week later, a friend runs up to me saying, yo, bro, you remember that chick you used to talk to? Yeah, what about her, is what I said. Well, like, she handed me this button and she told me to press it at like certain times. And he ended up showing me a text message from her of basically certain times that he should be pressing the button. Like, who makes a time frame for that? What? I don't know. To this day, I don't know what happened to that pair of underwear, but it definitely wasn't worth $50. I remember when I walked back into my bedroom, out of nowhere, I ended up seeing my babysitter going through my underwear drawer. And I looked at her saying, "What are you doing?" She ended up closing the drawer super quickly and she started panicking. And at that moment, I'm not gonna lie, it seemed like my babysitter was trying to steal my underwear. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another crazy but really insane story. So today's story all takes place back when I was in high school, and this was my grade 9 year. Now, in grade 9, I won't lie to you, I was a helpless romantic, and on top of that, I only was good at playing video games. In no way was I good at school, or even talking in that matter, because I used to have a really bad stutter. But I remember one time in my grade 9 year, I was coming home from school, and I saw my parents in the driveway with luggages packing their bags and putting things into the car. I didn't know what was going on, so I remember I walked up to them and said, "Mom, Dad, where are you guys going?" "Bubba, we're quickly going to be going to the States and we're going to be seeing some family, but you will be staying here to finish your homework." "Wait, so you're leaving me alone for the weekend?" At this moment, I was super excited and super happy because I thought, you know, if I was just me in the house, you know how much fun I could have? Playing video games all night, being able to eat whatever I want, being able to sleep whenever I want. Like, it was the golden opportunity for me to be the king of the house. So as I was super excited, I remember my parents were telling me, "Bubba, you do understand you're going to have a babysitter, right?" At that moment, I got so upset. My mood changed like a pregnant woman on Tuesday. Like, I was just so mad all of a sudden to the point where I was like, "Wait, are you serious? You're giving me a babysitter? Mom, I'm like in grade 9. Like, I don't need one, bro. I can handle myself." Obviously, my mom wasn't falling for it, and I guess she kind of thought that I was just going to end up staying up all night playing video games, eating junk food, and, well, not ever sleeping. Which, to be fair, that's exactly what I was going to do. But that's not the point. Going on, I remember my parents ended up walking inside the house with me, and they sat me down on the couch telling me that, you know, I need to make sure I get things done, and wrote down a list of chores for me to do. And at this point, I even got more upset because not only were they leaving me with a babysitter, but they gave me a list of things I had to finish and chores I had to do. Like, come on, bro. I thought things couldn't get worse. But then things started to actually kind of look up because I remember the door started to knock at my house, and right away, I ended up seeing my mom get up and go open the door, and she was just introducing herself to someone. Now, I didn't see who this was until I walked around the corner and saw the front door, and it was a really, really hot girl that actually went to my school, but she was in her grade 12 year. I remember when I saw her, I thought she was one of the hottest girls ever. And I've seen her around the school hallways before, but never did I expect her to be in front of my house. Like, I was so surprised and so puzzled on why this girl was a babysitter. But then out of nowhere, I remember she looked at me and said, "Wait, are you the person I'm babysitting? Don't you literally go to the same school as me?" Yeah, I don't really know why my parents got me a babysitter, but I mean, to be honest, like, it'll be chill, don't worry. I tried to play it off as cool as possible because, like, I don't know, it was pretty embarrassing knowing that my parents got me a babysitter and the person taking care of me was literally someone from my own high school. But I tried to play it off as cool as possible, and she kind of saw that I was trying to do that. But then her and my mom ended up going to the living room, and they sat her down and just told her, like, you know, what responsibilities I had and stuff. And me, right away at that moment, I went upstairs to my room and cleaned it as fast as possible. There was no way one of the hottest girls in my school, that was way older than me, by the way, was gonna see my bedroom being an ultimate mess. So I remember as I was cleaning my room, I ended up seeing my parents leaving the driveway with the car, and right away at that moment, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I automatically knew it was the babysitter, so I ended up just shoving as many things under my bed so it looked clean, and then that's when she walked in. Well, she did knock, and then she walked in. She walked in saying, Bubba, your mom told me that you should clean your room." "Oh, you already cleaned your room." "What? My mom said to clean my room?" "Nah, I always clean my room. I'm not like that." "Oh, well, that's pretty mature of you." "Yeah, you know, I know what I'm doing." As you guys can tell, I was really still trying to play it cool with her, but I don't think she was falling for it. Going on with the story, I remember we ended up having some downtime, and she ended up basically going downstairs and hopped on the TV while I was playing video games in my room. And as I was playing video games, I ended up getting called from the babysitter downstairs, and she said, "Bubba, can you come downstairs for a minute? I think I need you to do your homework." "You think I need to do my homework? What?" I don't know. I was really confused when she said that, but I went downstairs with my backpack that had all my schoolwork in it, and I plopped it in front of her in the living room while she was watching a show. Now, the show she was watching, funny enough, was a show called Criminal Minds. If you guys don't know what show that is, basically it's about these investigators that solve crimes. It's just a typical crime show that is, you know, on TV. No different than any other one. And I remember when I was sitting down watching the show with her, I automatically looked at her and said, "Oh, wait, you also watch this show?" Yeah, I've been watching this for a while. Wait, do you watch this as well?" At that moment, me and her, we ended up sitting in in the couch and we totally forgot about my homework. And me and her, we started watching the show together. And I love to do these things in these like mysterious shows about criminals where I basically get to predict the criminal before they even tell who it was. And every episode we would watch, I would always get it on the dot of who the bad guy was. She noticed this and she was very, very surprised and actually pretty turned on by it. Because I remember every time an episode would end and I would get it correct, she kept getting closer and closer and closer to me to the point where she actually like full on let me have my arm over her shoulder. I'm not gonna lie, for a babysitter doing this, it was kind of wild. And I know what you guys are thinking. Bro, wait, if she was in her grade 12 year, would that mean she's 18 and you were like, what, 13 turning 14 at this time? Yeah. I was, but that's not the point. I remember literally, no joke, it got to the point where me and her, we ended up looking at each other after an episode ended and we started staring eye to eye to each other. And then that's when I ended up shaking my head, kind of worrying about what she was gonna say. And so did she. And she looked at me saying, Baba, you should probably actually just do your homework. And that's when she got up and left. I ended up getting super confused because I thought me and her were having a moment. I wasn't gonna lie to you guys. Like, I thought this was my opportunity to do the Devil's Tango with her. But as I was doing my homework for like 20 minutes, I ended up realizing that I needed something upstairs in my bedroom. So I ended up going up the stairs and I did not see the babysitter anywhere as I was walking up there. But right as I enter my bedroom, I ended up seeing this babysitter going through my underwear drawer. At that moment, I looked at her and I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. Don't worry about it. She ends up slamming my underwear drawer shut and she's like, I was just looking for something. Okay, cool, I guess. I said it in the most awkward way possible and she realized that and she stood up and ended up leaving my room. I didn't know what was going on, but honestly, I didn't want to think too much about it. So what I decided to do was go take a shower. I remember I ended up taking a shower and literally before I take a shower, I like to put all the clothes I already had on inside the laundry basket so it would automatically go straight to the laundry room when my mom got home. So I would basically take off everything, have a towel on, went straight for the shower, but then right after my shower, I came out of the bathroom and I headed straight towards my bedroom. And one thing I noticed was that my babysitter was in my room and she was sniffing the underwear that I literally had on before my shower. At that moment, I started to freak out and I'm like, yo, what are you doing with my underwear? Oh, nothing. Don't worry about it. You know what? Just here. She ended up handing the underwear to me and she ended up going downstairs trying to make things less awkward. And since that moment, me and her, we didn't even speak at all to each other. Like, no joke, she wouldn't be in the same room as me. She wouldn't want to look at me, nothing. Which, to be fair, if I was caught smelling another person's underwear, I would probably do the exact same thing. But this is where things get hilarious because I remember a day goes on and basically I remember the babysitter woke me up and said that my parents were coming home soon. I got super excited because obviously I didn't want to handle this awkwardness any longer. And right as my parents got home, she ended up saying goodbye to the babysitter and, well, she left. But right as she left through the door, I went upstairs to my bedroom and I looked out my window. And right as she was walking away from my house, I am not even joking, she ended up pulling out something from her purse and it was my underwear and she was sniffing it as she was walking home. I am not joking. This was the most gross and insane thing ever. But not only that, this girl stole my underwear. If you guys have never had a babysitter who's done this, then follow for more embarrassing stories. Peace out, guys.